From trying to rescue his dog in the first movie, to John Wick maybe even coming back from the dead in the fifth movie. The John Wick franchise has come a long way, and now it needs to end. Here's why. Firstly, the series has to end on a good note.
Jonathan, just walk away.
Few action movie series have ended on a strong note. From A Good Day to Die Hard to Rambo Last Blood. Most action movie finales are so far from what made their series great in the first place that it feels like less of a swan song and more like a studio putting an IP out of its misery. The John Wick series is currently on a roll, but the filmmakers should be careful not to let it go on for so long that it hurts the series' reputation. The series runs the risk of becoming boring. So far, each John Wick movie has made things more dangerous. In the first movie, he gets his dog's life back.
Thinking there is a way out of this world for you, Mr. Wick. Or is not.
Then in the second movie, he has a personal grudge against a very strong enemy. That same thing continues the third, where he has to deal with the results of his desire for revenge. In the fourth and fifth movies, though, he's ready to go up against the whole high table group. But the producers can only make this fight more important so many times. Like Dom Toretto's Fast and Furious team, they'll end up in space at some point. It'd be best to end the John Wick series as soon as possible because it could get boring. It's not just about the franchise getting boring though. Even its lead actors going through some changes. Keanu Reeves' age isn't going down. Even though Keanu Reeves still does his best in every John Wick action scene, his age started to show in the fight scenes in Parabellum. In the last fight scenes, John's opponents are polite and give him time to get up after each hit. The threequel even makes a point of this. Reeves is dedicated like no one else, but he's in his 50s. All of the action in John Wick's fun because Reeves does all of the stunts himself. This lets the editors cut when it's best for the movie.
Both parties survive. Each will approach the other at increments of 10 paces until only one remains.
If the franchise has to use fast cuts like the famous fence jump scene in Taken 3, it'll lose its best feature. Ending on a good note means that the story's also reaching a good enough conclusion. The story's building up to its climax. In a wider fictional world, the first John Wick movie told a fairly simple story about a sad hitman seeking revenge for the death of his dog. After the next two movies flesh out that world and give John some very strong enemies, the story seems to be building up to some big payoffs. The fourth and fifth John Wick movies can tie up all the loose ends, in the same way that Infinity War and Endgame did for the Infinity Saga of the MCU. Let's face it, at some point, it needs to end. Since the story's made up of separate books, it needs a clear ending. It can't just keep going from one cliffhanger to the next until we stop caring and the show ends. This series has been raising the stakes and working up to an endgame for a long time. The story needs a planned, well thought out end that ties up all the loose ends. There's even a chance of the series officially ending in Chapter 4. But the director confirmed that the chances of us getting to watch John Wick 5 are better now. In the latest installment of this action franchise, Wick faces off against the highly ambitious Marquis de Gramont, all in a last-ditch effort to get away from the high table and earn his freedom. At the end of Chapter 4, he had a high table fight with Kane, who was standing in for the Marquis. After acting like he lost, Wick shot and killed the Marquis, but he seemed to die from his wounds. When asked about a possible John Wick 5 after the character died in the new movie, the director was hopeful, saying he and Reeves would never say no to a return if it made sense. Lionsgate first said that John Wick 5 and Chapter 4 would be shot at the same time in mid-2020. But the pandemic and Keanu Reeves' schedule on The Matrix Resurrections caused the project to be put on hold. Stahelski clarified that John Wick 5 had been put on hold for now because he and Reeves were tired of making movies, especially after making the huge new sequel and want to take a break from the series. Reeves had also hinted that there might not be a John Wick 5 and said that his character was dead. Even if Reeves doesn't come back for another sequel, John Wick Chapter 4 isn't the end of his time in the series or the franchise itself.
Man has to look his best when it's time to get married. Or buried.
I'm going to need a gun.
There's always room for spin-offs. The stars got a cameo shot in the Ana de Armas-led ballerina spin-off with Ian McShane, Lance Reddick, and Angelica Houston. He also had a say in where the movie fits in the overall timeline of the franchise. Also, it was just revealed that the long-awaited prequel show, The Continental, will start on Peacock this September. This means that there will be a lot more of the John Wick series in the near future. A different ending for John Wick Chapter 4 also hints that Reeves will survive the fight. So it'd be interesting to see if he and Stahelski can come up with a good story to bring him back in the future. Of course, there are many unanswered questions at the end of Chapter 4 that a fifth season could answer. Is John really dead, though? You don't see him being buried, for one thing. Winston could have also helped set up a fake grave so that John could finally live on his own. Maybe his goodbye is knowing that John won't be able to see him again. Fairly, I hope Wick finds peace in some way or another. Story-wise and thematically, it makes sense to kill him off for good. And to be honest, more shows could use clear endings. But Hollywood doesn't usually let a successful series rest for long. It isn't just Wick that everyone's got questions about. What's interesting about the Harbinger is that one of the first things I see of him is that his finger's been cut off. In Chapter 3, Wick cuts off his finger to make a blood oath for the High Table and get rid of the reward on his head.
You think your wife can hear you?
No.
Then why bother?
He was also meant to kill Winston, but he didn't. But is the Harbinger in Brown's book someone who kept his promise to the High Table? Maybe that's why he cares so much about the rules, especially the old ways, and why he often talks back to the crooked Marquis, who seems to be his boss. Because of this detail, the Harbinger seems to be John's opposite. His path seems to be one that John might have taken if he hadn't given up being a killer. This could even be why the Harbinger feels sorry for Wick in the end. He sees himself in Wick. Then there are some plot-related questions, like if Akira really killed Kane. Near the end of Chapter 4, Kane was about to be reunited with his long-lost daughter. Wick's sacrifice during their final fight kept Kane and his daughter from being killed by the High Table. Kane's got some serious issues with Koji's daughter, though. During a deadly sword fight, Akira runs in with a knife and attacks Kane before he can get to his daughter. We didn't see the fight because the scene ends before it happens, so the question still stands. Did she fight him to death? Will something or someone get in the way? Is she or Kane the new face of the John Wick movies? And folks, that's all for now. Do you think the series should end after Chapter 5? Share your thoughts in the comments below.